We are so thrilled to be partnering with Hinge. Hinge is the dating app designed to be deleted. As you all know, I'm a huge Hinge advocate as I met my partner of almost 3 years on the app. Even before meeting him, Hinge was always my go-to app because I met more relationship-minded people here and had some great dates. Clearly, I haven't been on the app for a little while, but I re-downloaded it to check out some of the new features. One that stood out to me was the voice prompt, my best friend's take on why you should date me, where your friend can hype you up. Not only does this make the profile creation less daunting, but it's not always easy to see your own green flags. So to test it out, I asked Yue some fun prompts to get her take on what I could put if I was dating again. So the first one, how long have we known each other? What was your first impression of me and how has that changed?
Julie and I have known each other for almost 10 years. My first impression of Julie was that she's very social, but I've learned that she has a lot more depth to her beyond the social butterfly that she is.
My next prompt, what do you think are my green flags?
I would say she's deeply loyal. She believes in love, curious mindset, and she is fearlessly ambitious.
And then last but not least, what kind of friend am I?
Julie is the kind of friend who will always have your back, no matter what.
Damn, that feels nice to hear. So download Hinge and try voice prompts today. Then find someone worth deleting the app for. I was so excited to get my shipment from Last Bottle Wines in the mail the other day, full of incredible red wines, all from Napa Valley. I love wine tasting, so having this to my door couldn't be happier. Also, couldn't be more excited that today's episode is brought to you by Last Bottle Wines. If you don't know already, they're a Napa-based online wine shop with a twist. They offer just one handpicked wine per day until it sells out, and they're always at incredible prices. We're talking 30 to 70% off retail. And the best part is that there's no subscriptions, no fees, and no minimum purchase. And I could not be more excited to bring this offer right now because they're having a marathon sale, which is coming up March 28th and 29th. Even better, we're offering Dateable listeners 10% off your first order with code DATEABLE. So if you are a wine lover like me, this is a great time to join. And did I mention that shipping is 100% free? So what are you waiting for? Mark your calendar for March 28th and 29th or get on it earlier if you want. You can sign up at lastbottlewines.com and use code DATEABLE and find out why Last Bottle is the most fun way to discover and buy amazing wine.
The Dateable podcast is hosted by me. I'm Yue, a former dating coach in New York turned active dater in San Francisco. On each episode, you'll hear commentary by my producer, Julie Kraftchick, and other surprise co-hosts. This episode of Dateable is brought to you by 500 Brunches. 500 Brunches connects like-minded people with similar interests to meet in real life over brunch. You answer a quick questionnaire about your interests and how you spend your time, and then they'll match you in small groups of 6 to 8 at a brunch spot in San Francisco. Get a free entry into a brunch now by signing up at 500brunches.com and using the code DATEABLE. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Dateable, a show that opens up a candid conversation about dating in San Francisco. Today I have a special co-host with me. His name is Harrison.
Woo! Hello, hello. It's great to be here. Great to be back.
He's our resident millennial because
Hashtag millennial, but yeah, we're here. We're
we like to stay connected with the next generation. So.
Yeah. We're swiping, we're job hopping, we're doing all of that, but millennials, we're here, loud and proud.
And our guest for the hour is Amal. So I'm going to give you a little bit of stats on her. Do you want to say hi really quick?
Yes. Hello. Thank you for having me here.
Thanks for being here.
She is 30 years old. She was born and raised in San Francisco. That makes you a unicorn, by the way.
Apparently.
That happens? That happened?
It used to, back in the day.
You're like an endangered species here. So you were in New York for 4 years before returning to San Francisco in May.
Yes.
So you kind of see the other side now.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely different from when I left. So I'm still adjusting. I mean, I can't believe I got back here in May because I'm like, shit, that's almost going to be a year now. And it doesn't feel like it at all.
Are you happy to be back?
Yeah, I mean, look, this is home. I love it. It's my whole family is here. It's what I knew. And I loved New York, but it just felt like it was time to come home.
Yeah.
I'm just still adjusting to all the changes because it is a very, very different city from before I left.
So Amal and I were speaking before we start recording, and speaking of the changes that you've seen in San Francisco, which transitions nicely into the topic we want to talk about today, which is race. Yes. One of the biggest changes you saw in San Francisco since coming back is what?
There's a lot of white people here now. I mean,
are you white folks? Where'd you come from?
New York.
No, yeah.
We're here.
Yeah, there's a lot of East Coast transplants.
I'm one of them. New Jersey in the house.
Oh, there you go. Holler. I went to Jersey once when I dropped my boxes off at Amtrak to come back to San Francisco.
Okay.
No offense,
No fist bumping. You didn't have the shore.
No.
Okay.
Jersey once.
How did you not go to the shore?
I mean, it's very
It's like a rite of passage for living on the East Coast.
Okay. Is it though?
I mean, I lived it.
Look, I'm a California girl.
Harrison.
I don't do Jersey Shore. No offense.
Okay, wow.
Thank you.
I can't do it.
Thank you.
Wow.
No offense, but no. I mean, when I grew up in San Francisco, I grew up in a very diverse San Francisco.
Right.
I think we were talking about it earlier. My family is ethnically Arab. My family is also Muslim. I went to middle school in the Mission at a Catholic school. I was not the only other there. There were plenty of, there were kids who had two moms. There were kids who were atheists. There were kids who were Buddhists. And
Right.
as far as race, I mean, it was everything you can imagine under the moon. So it has definitely been a bit of a culture shock. I mean, I thought moving to New York was a culture shock for me because everyone says New York is the most diverse place in the world, which it is. However, New York is also very segregated.
Extremely.
Thank you.
Yes.
None of my white friends understood that when I would tell them that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's different. In San Francisco, growing up here at least, it didn't matter where you came from. It was more of we recognized everyone's differences, obviously, but we celebrated everyone's differences. Mm-hmm. And in New York, it was just no one wanted to talk about what race you are. No one wanted to talk about your differences. Everyone was trying so hard to be inclusive that it kind of became segregated in a way.
Clicky.
Very
New York can
clicky.
be clicky.
Very,
Right.
very
Okay.
clicky.
You also have the neighborhoods too, the ethnic neighborhoods.
Yeah,
Right.
which have been gentrified, and I'm
Right.
totally guilty of that. I lived in Alphabet City, which was not a yuppie millennial neighborhood when I moved, or I should say before I moved there. You know what I mean? So I get it. I'm a victim of it, or I should say I am guilty of it. But when I moved back, what I realized is it's exactly like New York was, in the sense that no one wants to talk about anyone's differences, and the city isn't as quote unquote colorful as it used to be. It's predominantly white, and that's a little bit of a shock for me when
In
I came
4
back.
years, you think it changed that much? Really?
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know if I agree 100%.
Person as well, I feel like it's way more diverse.
Yeah.
Than it
I'm
is
the
in-
only
Maybe from
white.
where you guys came
I'm
from.
the only.
Yeah, maybe.
If I'm in New York, all my friends are white and Jewish, pretty much, and
Yeah,
here
exactly.
I'm literally the only white friend in my crew.
Yeah.
Same.
So I could see a little bit of both, you know.
Yeah, I mean, and I think obviously you guys are gonna have different experiences because you guys
Right.
grew up in different areas. For me,
Look.
look,
Okay.
San Francisco is still extremely diverse, and I don't want that to be the takeaway. It's really just, it's not as diverse as it used to be. And
Right.
for somebody who grew up here coming back, I think I was gone during that really fast tech boom. So for someone who grew up here coming back, that's been the biggest and most noticeable difference to me, beyond expensive rent.
And how does that translate into dating? What are some of the differences you've seen?
So, yeah, that's been interesting because I think I had a little bit of a test run in New York because it was the first time that I dated white guys. And
Oh, really?
Yeah. It was the
What
first
was that
time I
like?
ever-
First time dating white guys, and you went to New York for that?
Yeah, I never date.
Bankers?
it's-
Couple bankers?
Oh, yeah. We had
Or-
You're just dabbling around?
I just dabbled
Okay.
around. I was there for a while. But no, I mean, it wasn't intentional. It wasn't like I only want to date people of my race and my religion. It's just kind of, I don't know, it just never happened. And also, I think I should also say I was really young prior to leaving. I was 26 years old.
Yeah.
I was a baby.
Wow.
Yeah.
25.
As I put it, Harrison.
I was 26 and I had never really left my family, I should say, to that too.
Yeah.
So I was a baby, and I guess I think when I was younger, I really wanted to, quote unquote, do the right thing. And I was like, okay, well, I guess it's easier if I just am with somebody who is the same cultural and religious background as me. It's just easier.
So that's who you dated before going to New York.
Yeah, and I realized after the fact that was a very subconscious choice. I didn't realize I was doing that.
You weren't avoiding people with different backgrounds.
No,
Okay.
not at all. I wasn't avoiding it at all. I think I just, knew that was, what I was supposed to do. And I did it. And it wasn't until I moved to New York. And I moved to New York and I didn't know anyone. I had not a single person in the entire city.
Wow.
Yeah, all my friends that I had known who lived in New York had left by the time I got there.
Okay.
So, I didn't know anyone. And it was the first time I did online dating ever.
Tell us about your first white guy.
Who
was your first?
Let me think about that because I want to make sure I'm like.
Were there a few?
You can call him John. You don't have to use specific.
I should say like the first like white guy that I went on multiple dates with, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
He was. We actually wound up dating for about a year.
Wow.
We met on Tinder, and this is before I think Tinder had that horrible like everyone's just trying to have sex on here rep. But yeah, we met on Tinder, and I right swiped him by accident.
Wow.
I know this sounds horrible. I right swiped him by accident.
That's crazy.
And
did he know that?
No, I never told him that. So I was looking at his profile because he had a picture that was actually interesting. So I opened up his profile and I'm looking through his profile, and somehow I wound up swiping right. And he messaged me. He called me the wrong name. He clearly sent me a copy and paste message, and the message was, "Hey, Katie."
Oh my God.
Something. My response was, "Do I fucking look like a Katie?"
What?
That was my response.
Wow.
Because I was just, I don't know. I was just like, seriously, like you can put a little more effort.
Was there an
like,
angry emoji in there?
No, it was just that.
Boom. Wow.
And you know what? He took it, and we had this like back and forth banter, and we wound up dating for a year. So
was race ever an issue?
Here's the thing. For me, it wasn't, and I don't think it was in the forefront of his mind, but it did get brought up. Religion and race got brought up.
What was his religion?
He was non-practicing Jewish, so his family was Jewish, but he never even had a bar mitzvah. Like, he was very secular. But it got brought up in, I should say, in not very. Like the ways it would get brought up were when we were talking about family, for example. A lot of the things that I said my family did or were a part of cultural and religious cultural traditions as well, were seen as weird. And it was kind of like, there was always this underlining quote unquote joke. Like, it would always be a jokey thing. Like one time we were at a bar with his best friend and this girl his best friend was dating. And I introduced myself to them, and we're hanging out. And the girl that was with the guy was like, asking me again how to pronounce my name and this and that. And she's like, "Oh, so where are you from?" And my response to her was like, "Oh, I'm from San Francisco." And she's like, "No, but where are you actually from?"
Oh,
which happens to me a lot, and I see you nodding because I'm sure it happens to you all the time. And I'm like, well. I mean, specifically, I was born at Kaiser Hospital, Redwood City. Like, how detailed do we need to go? And I was like, okay, that's weird. And he kind of popped in, and to alleviate the situation, which wasn't weird or anything. I think
it's just ignorant.
Yeah,
right?
it was. He tried to make a joke about it, and a lot of times he made this joke a lot about me being Princess Jasmine and like, oh, she's from Agrabah. And I was
Were you cool with that?
No.
Okay.
No.
Did you tell him you were not cool with that?
Oh, yeah.
And he kept doing it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He would, for a while, he would stop. If it get brought up, I'd be like, we're not going to do that anymore.
Princess Jasmine?
Were you his first Muslim woman?
I was his first Muslim woman and his first non-white.
Oh,
so you were both each other's first outside of
outside of the
right.
Yeah. So, and I think one of the things that I learned from that relationship was never be their first non-white girl because it's too complicated. I don't want to teach somebody, and I get the differences, and I'm happy to, I have friends of plenty of different cultures, and I love learning about their cultures and vice versa. But when it's something where it's not, I want to say, I guess, when it becomes more difficult, when it becomes this struggle of like, I need to teach you so you can actually accept who I am, that's when I'm just like, I don't want to do that. And it became a little tiring after a while.
But did you think that you were also doing the same thing to him since he was your first?
I might have been, I don't think I was, because again, like, it was my first, it was kind of my first time realizing that dating me was different. Like for somebody who wasn't Muslim to date me would be different. Because I think a lot of times when people, hear like, oh, you're Muslim, they expect you to be a certain image of what a Muslim is. And it's not
what
fair.
Is that? What's that?
I think it's like, oh, well, you're not Muslim, so you don't drink, you don't eat pork, you don't have sex, you cover your hair, you pray 5 times a day, you do this, you do that, and it's like, well, there's billions of us. There's like billions of Muslims in the world. We're not all the same. Just like every Catholic,
every Jew is not, going to Shabbat every week.
Exactly, every Catholic's not.
Oh, of course, take a night off.
Let's keep talking about some of the initial challenges.
Yeah. So I think a lot of times, it's little things. It's like the micro things that people don't realize. Like I would tell some of my friends, I don't need a nickname. Like everyone can learn to pronounce my name. I'm not going to have a nickname. I don't need to explain this to people. Like, why is this always a thing? Anytime I introduce myself to a guy, it's this big thing about my name. So that's all, like, that's like an ongoing frustration every time you meet friends, That would always be a thing. Or, little things like, I don't drink. And, that is weird for a lot of people. It is very, very, very weird for a lot of people. And I have no problem going to a bar. I am a huge sports fan, so I was regularly at the sports bar every Sunday for football when I was in New York. But people do get really.
Did you ever drink, or?
I've tried alcohol.
Okay.
It's just not for me. Like I don't.
That's a cultural.
Yeah, I grew up in a family that didn't drink, because again, it is a religious thing. Muslims don't drink. And while my family, again, scales of different levels of religiousness, it was just never a part of that in the house, And even to this day, at family weddings, there's no alcohol out of respect for the elders of the family.
Speaking about family, because I'm really curious about your parents, your family, his parents, his family. Did they know you existed?
I found out later that they didn't. I think that he didn't think that we could be anything serious. And I don't think that. I know that because we had that conversation when we broke up. And, he didn't say that it was because of race or religion, but that is what he insinuated a lot. It's like cultural differences. And I get that that's, definitely an issue for interracial and interfaith couples all the time. And it's not a small issue by any means. It just, for me, it was never an issue, and it was something that I've always communicated with everyone I've dated that it's not an issue for me.
So I guess I'm going to play devil's advocate here. Are we being a little sensitive about race when we're talking about how is dating you different than dating, let's say, a girl who's vegan named Kirastase? How is that different? Because she also has her way, she doesn't drink, she's vegan, her name is hard to pronounce. How is that different?
To me, it's not different. I don't think it's different. It's always, I think it's been an issue for other people, which has been an issue for me because I'd never thought it was before. Do you know what I mean? I think it's something that people don't like to talk about race because it's uncomfortable. And the moment you bring up race, I think people automatically want to make sure that you know that they're not racist. And that's not just white people. I think
everyone.
It's everyone. You know, I know many people of many different cultures, and there's racism in every single culture.
For sure.
Right.
Racism and colorism exists, but we don't ever talk about it. So it becomes this uncomfortable thing. And I think I think especially because the fact that I am Muslim, I'm also Arab, we're very trendy right now, not in a good way.
I'm in.
Yeah. Hashtag Muslim girls. But you know, we're a hot topic, and it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. And I have no problem sitting and talking to people about race and religion and cultural differences at all. I love doing that stuff. Like, I think it's really interesting, but people are very uncomfortable doing it. And I think that's why my, you know, quote unquote cultural differences, because of my background, it becomes an issue because no one wants to talk about it.
I think part of it is because I'm thinking about sort of my own experiences. And when we had the yellow fever episode, in my mind, I don't see the race as the issue. It's the lack of effort put into trying to understand where you came from or where I came from. So if we remove race out of it, we could just say we're all the same color. It's just we were all brought up in different ways, and you have to make an effort to get to know that person. But if you take race, if you use race as an excuse, then people don't want to make that effort because they're like, oh, because we're not the same color, I will never understand.
Right.
Yeah.
It applies to differences in general. Like
in general,
vegan, I mean, it's
absolutely.
every difference.
Totally.
And how proactive can you be to find out and understand those differences?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that there's nothing wrong with people being different and coming from different cultures or different religions. I think it's awesome, and this may be the San Francisco hippie in me, but like, that's what I love. And I think if we just address it and talk about it, it wouldn't be an issue. Because I have dated white guys, and it's been great, and race and religion has not been an issue at all because it's something that we openly talk about. You know, when I moved back to San Francisco, I was actually dating somebody when I moved back here. It was somebody that I had known before. He was white and not Muslim, and it was never our differences weren't an issue at all. If anything, it was something that we kind of bonded on. You know, I would teach him words in Arabic. Like, he really wanted to learn those kind of things. He was like a SoCal skater boy, so he tried to teach me to skate. Like, you know, cultural differences.
Right.
Like, you know, building bridges.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've had plenty of situations where it's not an issue. But again, there are times where you are like you were saying, like, oh, you're Asian, so you're exotic. Like, ooh, that's something different. And it's like, I don't want to be that girl. I don't want you to be into me because of some quote unquote Princess Jasmine fantasy, which a lot of guys have a Princess Jasmine fantasy.
Oh, I have a Princess Jasmine fantasy.
That's pretty hot. That is pretty hot.
I was Jasmine for Halloween because I would love to be Princess Jasmine. But yeah, I agree.
So, did you ever look at your first white boy or white guy as a novel? Like, was it ever on the other foot?
It was never that way because I think in my situation, I went to like an all-white school. So I had no other options. So I didn't really think about race in that way. He and I, we were so young, you know, we were like in high school. So he and I never had these issues with race or culture. Because when you're young, you're naive, but at the same time, you're more open.
Yes,
you know?
100%.
But the older...
We think too much as we get older. We overthink. We overthink.
As we get older.
I agree.
Getting up there, you know.
I agree. I overthink everything. I'll co-sign that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because we do
especially with
think,
dating.
because, you know, we're looking at media, everything's influenced by everything now, social media, and then things that weren't issues before become issues for some reason. So the older we get, we collect more of these issues and we project them onto other people. But I want to know, how is dating different now in a time of Trump?
So I never ever thought I would have to screen people to see if they were Trump supporters in San Francisco. But yeah, that's a thing now, so that's exciting.
So how do you screen?
So I started going straight up, like, so let's get this out of the way, Trump or no?
No way.
Trump or
Like in the apps?
yeah,
or?
like I would like if first message, and then it actually got to a point where I can show you guys. I updated my Tinder and my Bumble profile, and that's a screen. Like I'm just like pre-date screener, dude. Like I need to know right off the bat. I've definitely had to like tell a few guys off.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
They're dabbles. They're here.
Here's what
Closeted. They're closeted.
I actually just today I left swiped on a guy who is in San Francisco to. According to his profile, he is creating Make America Great camps, youth camps
No.
in the Bay Area. So that's exciting.
What?
Yeah. Yeah.
That was on his Tinder profile?
Oh,
his
yeah.
bio?
Yeah.
I mean, I
Just
think,
moved to San Francisco.
isn't it funny that we think
crazy.
by virtue of being in San Francisco, you're a liberal who's not racist and you're a hippie? I mean, those are just kind of the things that you automatically put
there's so many
as labels
stereotypes
on
here.
people living in San Francisco, but we forget that there are quite a few others out
a big
there
city.
who
It's a
are,
diverse
you know,
city.
it's diverse in
very-
every sense
Exactly.
of the word.
You shouldn't
So,
assume
yeah.
anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So I've definitely had to screen people, you know, because to me, I mean, what's going on, like, I've always been politically aware and active, and I think that's because I grew up in San Francisco. I mean, I remember walking out of high school during the Iraq War to protest. Like, that's just what we did. But I never really cared if I dated somebody who was politically active as long as they were liberal, you know, as long as they had progressive views. That's all I cared about. And I think now it is more important because it's not just politics, especially with me. It's very personal. It's my life. It's my family's life. I'm the granddaughter of refugees. My parents are immigrants. I am an American-born Muslim. Like, it's very scary. And I hate that I have to be scared in the Bay Area. Like, but it is. And, you know, that's just the reality we live with, unfortunately. And I think right after the election, I was out of the country. I was in Brazil.
Brazil? Okay.
I was in Brazil. And when I came back, I was like, oh my God, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know, like, how I can even deal with this. And, you know, at first it was difficult because I was coming across those Trump supporters. Like, what the hell? This is San Francisco.
This exists?
But after the Muslim ban, I actually went to the airport for the protests. And I think that, I should say, let me backtrack. I took a break from dating after the elections. I was still active on all the apps, but I wasn't going on any dates because it did take a very big emotional toll on me, as I think a lot of people. And after the Muslim ban, I went to SFO and I saw everyone there and how many non-Muslims were there. And it was the most amazing thing. And it totally reminded me of like the San Francisco I grew up in. And it like gave me all this hope again. Because I was like, you know what? I think a lot of times people just kind of sit idly by because it's easy. You know, if you're not in a group that is targeted, it's easy to just kind of sit by and be like, well, what the hell is going on? Like, what are you guys complaining about?
Be passive about it.
Yeah, and I get it if you're uneducated about the topic. But to see how many people actually cared and like came up and were pissed about it and were out there hardcore, that like restored my faith in San Francisco and in humanity. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to start dating again. And that I swear to God.
I was going to ask, like, what was the turning point for you to like get back out?
Protesting at the Muslim ban.
Protesting is the new brunch. That's that's the millennial focus.
I buy that T-shirt.
So have you encountered, because you have this sort of screener for Trump supporters, have you encountered anybody who was a Trump supporter but still wanted to meet you?
No. But what I have encountered is a lot of really amazing dudes, actually. I mean, I haven't gone on... I will say this. I haven't gone on a date recently. I actually have a date tonight.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Tonight? After this?
Yeah.
You want him
Let's
to
get
come
him over here. Let's get him here right now. That would be pretty amazing.
I'm like,
Trump supporter.
yeah.
We know that for sure.
So what I was saying, so my screener actually has been a great conversation starter. I've had really good convos. Like, it might not always lead to a date, and it might just be like, the other night I had this great conversation with this guy. It was on Bumble, so obviously I had to start it. And my opening line was, "All right, let's cut the small talk. who were you cheering for in the Super Bowl? No, he's like, I'm a Patriots
fan. You're a Patriots fan.
Well,
but not a
You're all, yeah, I mean, Tom Brady, I love Tom Brady. He's a Michigan guy, but he, you know.
He's a Bay Area boy, too.
He's a Bay Area boy.
Born and raised in San Mateo. Yes.
Oy.
So I asked this guy that, in his response, he goes, I was rooting for the Patriots, but I'm from Boston. I love Tom Brady, but I do not support what him and Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft are saying or doing. And, you know, he asked me, he's like, you know, he's like, your name's different. Like, what's your background? And so we kind of got into it. And he's like, oh, man, he's like, how has it been dealing with this being Muslim? Like, it was great because it started a conversation, and now it's no longer weird. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's on the open so we can talk about it, and it's an open dialogue.
So you didn't end up meeting him, though?
We just started talking a couple days ago.
Okay.
So not yet.
Isn't it interesting that because of the Muslim ban, that this topic is top of mind for people, and it's actually making it easier for you to talk about this issue of race?
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
It's been, I think it's honestly, this is my whole thing. It's like, if we actually talk to each other and are open about things, it does not weird. Like, the reason why there's a taboo to talk about racism and bigotry is because no one wants to talk about it. Everyone's too scared to get labeled as a bigot or a racist. And I get it. Like, that's a horrible thing to be. No one wants to be labeled as that unless you are that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, being able to have these discussions, and it's something that everyone is thinking about right now, and it's constantly in the news, so it's kind of hard to avoid.
What other challenges do you face with dating?
Well, I think one of my challenges, this is not necessarily a religious, but it is a cultural challenge. Right now I'm living at home. Mm-hmm. I am 30 years old and living at home with my mom.
We respect it.
Which is very weird for a lot of people, and is definitely interesting when I bring it up to people. And I should say, you know, culturally, it's extremely normal and it's not just within the Arab culture, but with a lot of, you know, immigrant families, it's very normal to live at home until you're married. I'm living at home right now for financial reasons. I'm paying off a student loan, planning on moving out in the next few months, actually, but still, it's weird. And I didn't think it was going to be weird because, again, it's such a normal thing culturally. I don't know, you know, a lot of my friends who grew up in the Bay Area, who are of Arab descent, if they're not married, most of them are actually living at home because the Bay Area is expensive. And again, it's cultural norm.
I'm just curious, Harrison and Julie, what would you do? How do you think dating would be different if the leader of your country was targeting your people? Let's say the Jews in this case.
Since we're both Jewish.
Yeah.
Jewish in the house.
How do you think dating would be different for you?
So it would be challenging. I mean, without a doubt, I think it would always be my thought process. And the girls who I am dating need to understand my background and culture and how important it is to me. I think it would be more of a subconscious thing because for a lot of people our age, I think it's just natural. Like, I don't judge ethnicity, or I don't even think about it, you know, for people our age. But the generations, I think that's when it gets weird. Like, I think naturally I wouldn't fall for anyone who would be against kind of my background.
I mean, I think especially religion is something that we don't talk about. Like, race is obviously harder to ignore because it's front and center.
Yeah.
But religion, like, very rarely do people really dive deep. Like, back in the day, religion was super important in, like, finding a partner. But I think if, like, your leader is, like, anti your religion, it's obviously more front and center than ever before.
Yeah.
Right. It's also, I mean, different religions. Some you're actually religious, and then others for us, I mean, I think it's more of a culture thing than like being religious, and probably for yourself as well.
Yeah, I think that's actually like a perfect point because, you know, one of the things is like we don't talk about religion because it is like, you know, that quote, you don't talk about religion and politics when you go on dates. I break all those rules. I don't give a shit.
I think everyone these days are breaking
I'm
rules.
like,
have to.
Because I think similar to what you said as far as like, you know, your Jewish religion being a part of your culture and your heritage, like that's how it is for me, particularly because I am Arab and Muslim. Yeah. And the religion and the culture are very intertwined. So I might not be religious. I'm not praying.
Yeah,
5
you just
times
have
a day,
to,
but-
I mean, appreciate that I have an overbearing Jewish mother, you know,
There
that
you
she's
go.
there all the time. Appreciate that
But she'll feed
having
you all the time.
Yeah, appreciate that I'm always looking for a bagel. I'm sorry, like, I just have to make that happen. And I think the little things like
Go
that
back
add
to New
up.
York for that.
I know.
Yeah. I think though, like back to the thing about if the leader of your country is against your religion and background. I think like we were talking about, there's a cultural and like religious. However, there's a picture that he's painting that everyone is the same in like the most extreme situation. So it's kind of like, at least this is how I feel. I would love to
No,
hear your
totally.
opinion. It's like
I'm with you so far.
I feel like I would think like, do people even know who I am and what my views are, or are they just judging me now because I'm Jewish and this is what they hear about Jews and whatnot?
No, I mean, I completely co-sign that. I think that's probably why I took a little break from dating after the election, because it was just like, oh, this is too much. This is like overload. Call me a snowflake. I don't give a shit. But I was going through my emotions. I was like, shit, like, does this country really hate, like, my country hates me that much? As a woman, as a person of color, as a Muslim, like, what the fuck? Yeah. So I was going through all those emotions as well. And I think the one thing, like I said, like, the Muslim ban, like, the horribleness of the leader of your country putting this, like, horrible label on all your people actually brought up this really beautiful thing, and I think united a lot of people. So I'm kind of, what I've noticed at least, and maybe because I do put it out there, I am having much more open and honest conversations about our differences, and that's awesome. And it's been great so far. So hopefully that's the direction we kind of go in.
Yeah. I love that. I think, I think about if this were turned around on me, how I would date. I would do the same thing. I would have the same screener. Yeah. And I would think I would actually want to go on dates with people who were for the enemy, right? I would want to go on dates with them.
That's the only way.
Right? I want to have open conversations with them and, understand where they're coming from, because obviously they're as passionate about this as you are. I would love to hear what they want to say. And on the flip side is, I really hate when people say, these are topics you should stay away from on a first date. We talk about politics, religion, also kids, marriage, all that. Fuck all that.
I agree.
On a first date,
you gotta filter. I mean,
standing
in the beginning, you should get all that out of the way.
Yeah. You don't want to find out someone's like anti your religion.
Yes.
Yes. Down the line.
Yes. Like I don't buy into this whole idea of a honeymoon period in a relationship, because in the beginning of a relationship, that's when you're hashing shit out.
Totally.
That's when you should be asking these deeper questions.
I agree. I mean, that's when you need to know. That's when I can tell you, like, look, you're not going to come to the family barbecue. Like, that's not going to happen unless we get serious.
Like, what's the difference? Yeah.
I mean, like, for some people, like, I get it. Like, that is an issue for a lot of people, but it needs to be discussed.
I couldn't agree more. If we're swiping based off of looks, why can't we swipe in quotes based off of, very clear, obvious
values.
Like, just so simple. Like, it's so obvious in our face,
I agree.
We're always swiping on physical appearance. Why can't we just do it? But I couldn't agree more. We have to talk to the other side.
I think the key is we need to talk.
Yeah.
We have to stop ignoring these issues.
Maybe go on a date or two.
If you go on a date with a Muslim woman, you cannot ignore the fact that she's a Muslim woman. Is there M swipe? We should do a Muslim swipe.
There actually is. There's one called Minder.
Minder?
Is that J-date for
but it's again, this is the whole thing where, like, the idea of what a Muslim is kind of like all over the place, because I think a lot of the times, especially within the Muslim community, we didn't get to talk about this, but I know within the Muslim community, there's also an image of what a Muslim is supposed to be like. Like, if I went into a quote-unquote Muslim community, they would be like, oh, you got tattoos, you have, crazy hair colors. Like, no, you're definitely not you're not a good Muslim girl. But yeah, there is like this whole idea of what that is and how to fit into that box. So Minder was created with this idea of like Muslims finding each other for marriage.
Yeah. So the proper Muslims.
Yeah.
That's a whole other episode. It's all about being this like hyphenated ethnicities.
Yes.
So not being accepted by the masses, but also not being accepted by your own ethnicity is also another topic we'll talk about, say, for another day. Question of the day. From Vanessa. She says, I am an Asian woman dating a white man, and he is totally cool with our cultural and racial differences, but his parents may not be cool. How do I approach this situation? Yep, I've encountered this many a times because so we're all like, yep, been there.
Right.
The issue is, I like to see, one, if he agrees that his parents do have an issue, because I've dated guys who their parents obviously had an issue, but he did not want to see it. So he didn't want to admit to it. And so he's very defensive. And then two, I think, is she also, I would say, Vanessa, are you also being overly sensitive? What are the symptoms of someone being uncool with your race? Maybe you're just being sensitive to that. But last, I just say open communication. First, talk to your boyfriend and say, I have a feeling that your parents are maybe uncomfortable with us. Don't bring up race. Just say, I think just us. Like, what is it? And then if the opportunity presents itself, sit down with the parents and openly talk about it. See what happens.
I would say tread lightly, but the only way to move forward is talking. You have to talk about this stuff. And getting silently judged at family dinners is not going to help anyone.
Not fun.
And yeah, I also think he needs to step up his game and take a more proactive approach to get the talking to happen.
Yeah, and maybe his parents are just not cool with her.
Right, exactly.
It has nothing to do with her race. Maybe they just don't like her.
That could be the scapegoat, honestly. That would be a horrible scapegoat. But,
Amal?
I mean, I've been there, and I think that goes exactly what you were just saying. I mean, I think it goes back to talking. If you're waiting this long to have that conversation, look, you might date a guy or you might date a girl, and it might be an issue for their parents. I personally, I'm like, I don't care if it's an issue for your parents. I care if it's an issue for you. Are you going to defend me? Are you going to stand up for what you want? Or are you going to crumble the moment your parents are like, no? Because that has happened to me. I've had guys crumble the moment their parents say no. And it's fine. It is what it is. You move on. But I think if you have those conversations early on and you're reassuring each other, like, Vanessa's reassuring her boyfriend that she's in this and vice versa, I don't think it really becomes an issue. It then becomes a problem for the parents, and the parents are just going to have to get the hell over it because they're in this together.
Let's wrap this up. I like this. I like this. It's a deep episode, and also this is a deep question because I think it deals with family issues. So, listeners at home, we would love to hear from you. Have you had any challenges with someone's family? Dating someone whose family didn't approve you. I want to hear from you. How do you deal with that kind of situation? And we just want to hear from you in general. Write in and, drop us a line. We love to hear your stories. And last but not least, 1, 2, 3, stay dateable. The most efficient way to meet new people is a combination of online and offline. 500 Brunches has your offline covered. Connect over brunch with new friends. Come alone or bring a buddy. There is always a table full of friendly faces, mimosas, and eggs Benedict. Sign up at 500brunches.com and use the code DATEABLE for a free entry. To connect with us, visit dateablepodcast.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, all under Dateable Podcast.